The massive ship appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system without warning, its hull stretching over 20 kilometers from end to end and gleaming like polished silver against the black of space. Earth's early warning systems detected it first, sending alarms through every military command center on the planet. But the ship made no aggressive moves and instead transmitted a simple message in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and dozens of other human languages simultaneously. The message was brief but shocking. Greetings to the people of Earth. We are representatives of the Galactic Council, and we come bearing an offer of peace and prosperity for your species. President Hyun-woo received the notification while reviewing economic reports in his office in Geneva. The pale morning light filtering through the windows as his aide Jin-soo burst through the door with wide eyes and trembling hands. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," Jin-soo said, activating the wall display to show the alien vessel hanging, motionless near Jupiter's orbit like a metallic moon that had wandered too far from home within hours. Every major government on Earth had been contacted by their own military commanders, and emergency sessions were called in capitals around the world as humanity faced its first contact with alien intelligence. The ship identifying itself as the Eternal Harmony requested permission to approach Earth and establish diplomatic contact, proposing a meeting at the United Nations headquarters in New York to discuss what they called humanity's integration into galactic civilization. Admiral So Young of the Earth Space Navy stood in the war room beneath Geneva, watching sensor readings from the alien ship with growing unease as her technical staff tried to understand the vessel's impossible technology. "Their ship shows no radiation signatures from any known propulsion system," reported Commander Ha-Nul from her monitoring station, her fingers dancing across holographic displays, showing energy readings that made no sense according to human physics. Captain Dong-min arrived from Mars Colony aboard the fastest courier ship available, his weathered face grim as he reviewed intelligence. Reports about the alien vessel's capabilities during the 3-day journey to Earth. Dr. Kyung-ho worked frantically in his xenobiology laboratory, preparing protocols for first contact while trying to imagine what forms of life might have evolved under alien suns, his mind racing with possibilities both wonderful and terrifying. The aliens agreed to meet on neutral ground, and within a week, representatives from the Galactic Council descended to Earth in a smaller shuttle that seemed to bend light around itself as it landed in Central Park under the watchful eyes of millions of humans and thousands of cameras. Ambassador Veltar stepped from the shuttle first, his tall, slender form moving with fluid grace as he surveyed the assembled human delegation, his large, dark eyes reflecting an intelligence that seemed both ancient and amused. Behind him came 6 other beings representing different species from across the galaxy, each more alien than the last, their forms ranging from the crystalline and geometric to the flowing and organic, united only by an air of calm confidence. President Hyun-woo greeted them personally, flanked by Admiral So Young, Captain Dong-min, Dr. Kyung-ho, and Jin-ae, the Director of Global Intelligence, who had insisted on being present despite the diplomatic nature of the meeting. The aliens spoke through translation devices that converted their words into perfect human speech, their message delivered with the patient tone of teachers addressing promising but backward students. "Your species has achieved interplanetary travel and nuclear technology," Veltar explained, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd through hidden speakers. "These achievements mark you as ready for inclusion in our galactic community." The offer they presented seemed too good to be true. Advanced technology that would solve Earth's energy problems overnight, medical advances that could extend human life by centuries, and access to trade networks spanning thousands of worlds. In exchange, they asked for something that seemed simple and reasonable. Humanity would need to dismantle all military weapons above the level of personal defense and submit to Galactic Council oversight of any future military development. "Every species that joins our community makes this same choice," Veltar continued, his tone suggesting that refusal was unthinkable. "They trade the burden of military preparedness for the safety and prosperity of galactic membership." The presentation included holographic displays of council member worlds, showing gleaming cities beneath alien skies, peaceful populations engaging in art and science, and vast networks of trade ships moving freely between stars, without fear of conflict. Dr. Kyung-ho asked technical questions about the medical technology, his scientific mind captivated by the possibilities of nanomedicine and genetic therapy that could eliminate disease and aging from human experience. Admiral So-young remained silent during most of the presentation, but her military mind was calculating the implications of complete disarmament in a galaxy full of unknown species and potential threats. Captain Dong-min studied the alien delegation carefully, noting their relaxed postures and confident expressions, the way they spoke of military disarmament as if it were obviously the correct choice for any intelligent species. Jin-A observed everything through the lens of intelligence analysis, cataloging details about alien technology, social structures, and the subtle assumptions underlying their diplomatic approach. The council representatives seemed genuinely puzzled when President Hyun-woo requested time to consider their offer, as if they had never encountered a species that needed to deliberate before accepting such obvious benefits. "We understand this is a significant decision," Veltar replied with patient amusement. "But surely you can see the wisdom of joining a peaceful galactic community rather than remaining isolated and vulnerable." President Hyun-woo maintained his diplomatic composure while internally wrestling with the magnitude of the choice facing humanity, knowing that whatever decision he made would determine the future of his entire species. The alien delegation was provided with comfortable accommodations in a specially prepared facility, while Earth's leaders retreated to secure conference rooms to debate the most important decision in human history. Arguments raged through the night as government officials, military commanders, and scientific advisors tried to weigh the benefits of advanced alien technology against the risks of complete military dependence on foreign powers. Some argued that the offer represented humanity's best chance for advancement and survival, pointing to the obvious technological superiority of the Council and the peace they had maintained across hundreds of worlds. Others worried about surrendering humanity's independence and ability to defend itself, drawing parallels to historical examples of technologically advanced civilizations conquering less developed peoples through seemingly beneficial arrangements. Dr. Kyung-ho presented analysis of the alien technology they had observed, noting that while it was clearly far beyond human capabilities, it also showed signs of being very old and standardized, as if innovation had slowed or stopped. Admiral So-young raised concerns about the military implications, pointing out that once humanity dismantled its weapons, they would have no way to resist. If the Council's intentions proved less benevolent than advertised, Captain Dong-min supported her position with historical examples of military disarmament leading to political subjugation, arguing that weapons were tools of independence as much as instruments of war. Ginny presented intelligence analysis, suggesting that the Council's offer might not be as voluntary as it appeared, noting the delegation's surprise at humanity's request for time to consider and their apparent unfamiliarity with resistance to their proposals. President Hyun-woo listened to all arguments while struggling with the weight of responsibility, knowing that his decision would affect not only current humanity, but all future generations of his species. After 3 days of intense debate, votes were taken in secure chambers around the world, with Earth's unified government reaching a decision that surprised even many of its own members. President Hyun-woo returned to the alien delegation with his answer, his calm exterior hiding the turmoil of emotions beneath as he prepared to deliver humanity's response to their first contact with galactic civilization. "We are deeply honored by your offer," he said, his words carried to billions of humans watching around the world. "And we appreciate the benefits of membership in your galactic community." The alien delegation leaned forward slightly, their expressions showing confident expectation of humanity's inevitable acceptance of their generous proposal. "However," President Hyun-woo continued, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to say, "humanity must respectfully decline your offer." The silence that followed seemed to stretch across light years, as the alien delegation processed words they had apparently never heard before from any species they had encountered. "We choose to forge our own path among the stars," President Hyun-woo concluded, while remaining open to friendship and cooperation with all peaceful species. Veltar's expression shifted through confusion, disbelief, and finally a kind of shock that suggested he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. alien delegation departed within hours, their shuttle rising silently into the sky as Earth's leaders watched and wondered what consequences. The journey back to Centraxis took 3 standard galactic days, but Ambassador Veltar spent most of that time staring out at the stars through the observation deck of the Eternal Harmony, trying to process what had just occurred on the small, blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star. Never in his 2 centuries of diplomatic service had any species rejected the Council's offer, and the memory of the human leader's calm refusal played repeatedly in his mind like a recording stuck in an endless loop. His aide Krelnoth approached cautiously, her crystalline form chiming softly as she moved, the sound indicating her own confusion about the unprecedented situation they had witnessed. Ambassador, should we prepare alternative proposals for the humans? She asked, her translated voice carrying the harmonic undertones of her species' natural communication. Perhaps. They misunderstood the benefits we were offering. Veltar turned from the viewport, his elongated features showing an expression that would have been unreadable to humans, but conveyed deep concern to his fellow council members. They understood perfectly, he replied, his voice carrying a weight that had not been there before. Their visit to Earth. They simply chose to refuse what every other species in the galaxy has accepted. The ship's communication systems activated as they entered council space, transmitting their report to the massive ring-shaped station that served as the government center for 847 different species spread across thousands of worlds. Council Speaker Zephyulon received the transmission while reviewing routine administrative matters in his chamber, the vast circular room designed to accommodate the diverse physiological needs of council representatives. The speaker's 4 arms moved in the gesture of deep surprise, his species equivalent of dropping something in shock, as he absorbed the contents of Veltar's report about humanity's rejection within hours. Emergency sessions were called throughout the council complex as news of humanity's refusal spread through the administrative levels like wildfire jumping between dry trees. Sub-Commander Velnara of the Council Defense Corps received the notification, while conducting routine inspections of the peacekeeping fleet, her insectoid features showing the rapid antenna movements that indicated intense concern. She immediately called for a comprehensive analysis of human military capabilities, something that had never been necessary for any previous first contact situation since every species had accepted council protection. The intelligence reports that arrived over the following days painted a picture that grew increasingly disturbing. With each new piece of information about human society and military development, unlike every other species the Council had encountered, humans had not focused their post-industrial development primarily on art, philosophy, or peaceful scientific research. Instead, they had continued developing military technology even after achieving spaceflight, building weapons platforms, defensive installations, and what their own documents referred to as strategic deterrence systems. Admiral Thekamara of the Council's peacekeeping fleet studied the human military assessments with growing unease, his tentacled form shifting colors in patterns that indicated deep concern among his species. The humans possessed nuclear weapons in quantities that seemed excessive for any conceivable defensive purpose, along with conventional military forces. Spread across multiple worlds and space installations, more troubling was their apparent attitude toward warfare itself, which their historical records revealed as something they studied, planned for, and even seemed to view as a source of technological and social advancement. Dr. Quinthara, the Council's leading expert on species psychology, presented her analysis to an emergency session of the full Council Assembly, her findings casting shadows over what had seemed like a routine integration process. Most species experience warfare as a temporary aberration in their development, she explained to the assembled representatives, something to be overcome and left behind as they achieve technological maturity. The holographic displays showed comparative data from hundreds of Council member species, all following similar patterns of military reduction as they advanced technologically and socially. Humans appear to treat warfare as a permanent aspect of existence, she continued, her multiple eyes focusing on different sections of the data as she spoke. Something to be prepared for rather than eliminated. The psychological profiles painted humans as a species that seemed to thrive on conflict and competition, using external challenges as catalysts for innovation and internal unity. Council Speaker Zephyulon called for input from the historical archives, seeking precedent for how to handle a species that refused integration into the galactic community. Archivist Mel Torian accessed records spanning 3 millennia of Council expansion, his mechanical form clicking and whirring as he processed vast databases of diplomatic encounters. "In our entire recorded history," he reported to the emergency session, "no species has ever refused Council membership after being offered full benefits and protection." The implications of humanity's refusal began to ripple through Council chambers as representatives considered what this unprecedented situation might mean for galactic stability. Some species had initially been reluctant to disarm completely, but gentle pressure and demonstrations of Council military superiority had always convinced them to accept protection rather than maintain their own weapons. Others had requested modifications to the standard agreement, but none had ever chosen complete independence over the obvious benefits of Council membership. Defense Coordinator Vexhana presented the most troubling aspect of the situation to the emergency assembly, her mechanical voice carrying no emotion, but delivering facts that chilled many listeners. "If word spreads that a species can refuse Council integration and remain independent," she warned, "it may encourage other member species to question their own disarmament agreements." The Council had maintained peace and stability across the galaxy for over 3,000 years by ensuring that no single species possessed the military capability to threaten others. This system worked because every species accepted the fundamental principle that security came through collective protection rather than individual strength. Humanity's rejection of this principle represented a crack in the foundation of galactic civilization that could spread if not addressed quickly and decisively. Strategic analyst Porthek presented projections showing how human independence might influence other species, particularly younger civilizations that had joined the Council more recently. Some member species still maintained small police forces and limited defensive capabilities, but these were strictly regulated and insufficient for interstellar conflict. These species began to question whether complete disarmament had been necessary. The entire structure of Council authority could begin to unravel. Military intelligence. Chief Karnoth delivered the most disturbing intelligence about human capabilities, based on long-range observations of their military exercises and technology demonstrations. "Their military doctrine does not focus solely on defensive operations," he reported, his serpentine form coiling with agitation as he spoke. "They actively plan for offensive capabilities and what they term power projection." The concept of deliberately developing the ability to carry warfare to other star systems was so foreign to Council thinking that many representatives struggled to understand the implications. Every Council species had eventually accepted that military strength was less important than diplomatic cooperation and collective security. Humans seemed to believe that military strength was a prerequisite for meaningful diplomacy and true independence. Economic advisor Leth Mira presented analysis of what human independence might mean for galactic trade networks and resource distribution systems. The Council's economic model depended on specialized worlds contributing specific resources and capabilities to the collective good, with military protection ensuring stable trade routes. Independent human military forces could potentially disrupt this system by providing alternative security arrangements for worlds that might prefer bilateral agreements to Council oversight. Cultural anthropologist Nexvaran offered perhaps the most unsettling analysis of all, suggesting that human culture might actually be fundamentally incompatible with Council civilization. Most species develop cultural values that prioritize collective harmony and conflict avoidance. She explained, "Humans appear to value individual achievement and competitive struggle." This cultural difference might explain why humans had rejected an offer that every other species had found irresistible. After days of analysis and debate, Council Speaker Zephulan called for a final vote on how to respond to humanity's unprecedented refusal. The options ranged from simply leaving humans alone to monitor them from a distance, to actively demonstrating Council military superiority. To encourage reconsideration, Subcommander Velnara argued forcefully for decisive action, pointing out that allowing human independence to continue would set a dangerous precedent every day. That humans remain armed and independent, she warned, is another day that other species might begin questioning whether they made the right choice in joining us. Admiral Tekmara supported her position with strategic analysis showing that human military capabilities, while currently inferior to Council forces, were advancing rapidly. The first intelligence reports arrived 3 weeks after the Council delegation had departed Earth, transmitted by deep space monitoring stations positioned at the edge of human territory, where long-range sensors could detect approaching vessels. Jinne stood in the intelligence center beneath Geneva, watching holographic displays that showed massive fleet movements throughout Council space, the scale of military mobilization unlike anything in recorded galactic history, 15 different staging areas. She reported to President Yunwoo during an emergency briefing, her voice steady despite the implications of what she was revealing, with fleet concentrations that suggest they're preparing for a major operation. The numbers were staggering. Over 10,000 Council vessels converging on assembly points throughout their territory, representing military might accumulated over 3 millennia of peaceful expansion. President Hyunwoo absorbed this information while reviewing Earth's defensive capabilities, knowing that humanity's entire space navy consisted of fewer than 200 vessels scattered across 3 star systems. Admiral So Young arrived from Luna Base aboard her flagship, the heavy cruiser Incheon, her weathered face showing the strain of sleepless nights spent planning for what seemed like an impossible defensive situation. "They'll likely approach through the outer system," she explained to the assembled military. Leadership using holographic projections to illustrate likely Council attack vectors. Standard peacekeeping doctrine calls for overwhelming force displays. Captain Dongmin had returned from Mars colony with detailed assessments of human defensive installations, orbital platforms, and the scattered fleet elements positioned throughout the solar system. His report painted a sobering picture of humanity's military situation. Well-trained personnel, modern equipment by human standards, but numbers that seemed insignificant compared to Council capabilities. Commander Hanul provided updates from the outer colonies, where human settlements on Europa, Titan, and the asteroid mining stations were preparing for potential siege conditions. "We've got maybe 50,000 trained military personnel spread across the entire system," she reported, "plus civilian volunteers who know how to operate basic defensive systems." Dr. Kyung-ho had spent weeks analyzing every piece of Council technology they had observed during the diplomatic visit, working with teams of engineers to understand alien capabilities and identify potential weaknesses. "Their technology is clearly superior to ours," he admitted during the technical briefing, "but it also appears to be very standardized, as if they haven't faced serious opposition in centuries." The alien equipment showed signs of being optimized for peacekeeping operations against compliant populations, rather than warfare against determined resistance. Jinne presented intelligence analysis suggesting that Council military doctrine was based on the assumption that overwhelming technological superiority would lead to quick surrender. "Every species they've encountered has accepted Council authority rather than fight," she explained. "Their entire military philosophy assumes compliance after initial demonstrations of force." This presented both challenges and opportunities for human defensive planning, since Council forces were unlikely to be prepared for extended resistance. President Hyunwoo made the decision that would define humanity's response to the approaching threat. Rather than attempt conventional defense of fixed positions, human forces would adopt asymmetric warfare tactics. Admiral So Young began implementing what became known as Project Defiance, abandoning traditional space combat doctrine in favor of mobile operations designed to exploit Council overconfidence. Human vessels would not attempt to hold territory or protect specific locations, but would instead operate as independent units, striking at Council logistics and command structures. Captain Dongmin took charge of developing new tactical doctrines specifically designed to counter technologically superior forces, drawing on human military history for inspiration. His team studied every successful resistance campaign from Earth's past, identifying principles that could be adapted to space warfare against overwhelming odds. The key insight was that humans had repeatedly defeated larger, better-equipped enemies by refusing to fight on their opponent's terms, and instead choosing unconventional approaches. Commander Hanul coordinated the dispersal of military assets throughout the solar system, creating hidden supply depots and concealed bases that could support extended operations. Rather than concentrating forces for major fleet engagements, human units would scatter and regroup, making it impossible for Council forces to eliminate Human resistance with single decisive battles. Dr. Kyung-ho led crash programs to reverse engineer Council technology captured during their diplomatic visit, focusing on communication systems and defensive capabilities. His teams made several breakthrough discoveries, including vulnerabilities in Council automated systems and the locations of manufacturing facilities that supplied their fleets. Most importantly, they learned that Council technology relied heavily on centralized control networks that could potentially be disrupted by coordinated attacks. Jin AI activated a secret project that had been years in development, revealing the existence of Operation Prometheus to the assembled military leadership. Hidden throughout human space were automated shipyards, weapons manufacturing facilities, and communication relays designed to continue operating even if Earth fell to enemy forces. The project had been inspired by lessons from Earth's history about the importance of distributed production capabilities and the danger of concentrating critical resources in single locations. Even if Council forces conquered the Sol system, humanity's war machine would continue functioning from dozens of hidden facilities scattered throughout human territory. Lieutenant Colonel Min Ho of Earth's Special Operations Command presented plans for infiltration and sabotage operations designed to exploit Council security vulnerabilities. His analysis suggested that Council vessels were designed with internal security measures optimized for peaceful cooperation rather than hostile boarding actions. Human special forces could potentially infiltrate Council ships to gather intelligence, sabotage critical systems, and create confusion within enemy command structures. The training programs began immediately, with military personnel drilling on new tactics while civilian populations prepared for extended conflict. Unlike other species the Council had encountered, humans began converting their entire society to support extended warfare, with factories retooling to produce military equipment and research facilities focusing on weapons development. President Hyun-woo authorized the activation of wartime production protocols, mobilizing human industrial capacity to maximize military output in the time remaining before Council forces arrived. Shipyards throughout the system began working around the clock to complete vessels under construction, while weapons manufacturers ramped up production of missiles, defensive systems, and small craft. The psychological preparation was as important as the physical preparations, with human leadership working to maintain morale in the face of seemingly impossible odds. Admiral So Young addressed fleet personnel throughout the system via encrypted communications, explaining the strategic situation and the importance of unconventional tactics. "We're not going to fight them ship to ship," she told her commanders. "We're going to make them pay for every system they try to control, every supply line they try to maintain." Captain Dong Min coordinated training exercises that prepared human crews for rapid redeployment, hit-and-run attacks, and operations in contested space. The exercises revealed both strengths and weaknesses in human preparations, leading to rapid adjustments in tactical doctrine and equipment deployment. Commander Han-Nul supervised the establishment of hidden command centers throughout the outer system, ensuring that human resistance could continue even if primary military installations were destroyed. These facilities were connected by encrypted communication networks, designed to be difficult for Council forces to detect or disrupt. Dr. Kyung-ho's teams achieved their first major breakthrough when they successfully adapted Council shield technology to human vessels, providing defensive capabilities that partially closed the technological gap. The reverse engineering program also yielded improved weapons systems and sensor technology that gave human forces better intelligence about Council capabilities. Jin AI coordinated intelligence-gathering operations designed to monitor Council fleet movements and predict their tactical approaches. Her networks of deep space sensors and automated monitoring stations provided early warning of approaching forces while gathering data about Council military capabilities. As the weeks passed and Council forces continued their preparations, human society transformed itself for total war in ways that would have been unthinkable to species accustomed to Council protection. Civilian populations volunteered for military service. Industrial facilities converted to weapons production, and research institutions focused entirely on military applications. The transformation reflected humanity's historical experience that survival sometimes required total commitment, and that freedom was worth any price necessary to preserve it. President Hyun-woo maintained diplomatic communications with other human colonies and allied species, warning them of the approaching conflict and requesting any assistance they could provide. Admiral Zephron stood on the command deck of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Peace, watching long-range sensors detect the edge of human space as his fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel. The Council peacekeeping fleet stretched across several light minutes of space, over 10,000 vessels representing the combined military might of nearly 1,000 worlds that had never known defeat behind him. His staff officers monitored communications from across the fleet, coordinating the movements of ships whose crews had trained for centuries but never faced actual combat against a determined enemy. "Commence standard peacekeeping deployment," he ordered, his translated voice carrying the calm confidence of someone who had never encountered resistance to Council authority. The fleet began its approach to the Sol system in the traditional formation used for all previous peacekeeping operations. Overwhelming. Force arranged to demonstrate irresistible power to any species, considering resistance. Long-range communications transmitted the standard surrender demand toward Earth, offering humanity one final opportunity to accept Council protection before the demonstration of superior force began. Admiral So Young received the Council ultimatum aboard her flagship while coordinating final preparations with scattered human forces throughout the solar system. "They're demanding unconditional surrender within 12 hours, she reported to the Emergency Command Conference, followed by immediate disarmament and acceptance of Council authority. Captain Dongmin acknowledged the message from his position near the asteroid belt, where his task force lay hidden among the mining installations that dotted the region between Mars and Jupiter. His ships had been modified with stealth systems and painted to blend with the rocky debris, making them nearly invisible to long-range sensors designed to detect conventional military vessels. Commander Ha Newell confirmed readiness from the outer system, where her colonial defense units had taken positions among the ice and rock of the Kuiper Belt. The human defensive plan relied on dispersal and mobility rather than concentrated firepower, forcing Council forces to hunt for scattered units rather than engaging in decisive fleet actions. Dr. Kyung-ho monitored the approach from his technical command center, using adapted Council sensors to gather intelligence about enemy capabilities, while coordinating electronic warfare preparations. His teams had identified vulnerabilities in Council communication networks and automated systems, weaknesses that could be exploited if human forces could get close enough to their vessels. Ginny coordinated intelligence gathering from her command bunker beneath Geneva, tracking Council fleet movements while preparing psychological warfare, operations designed to undermine enemy morale. The 12-hour deadline passed without response from human leadership, prompting Admiral Zephron to begin the standard peacekeeping demonstration that had convinced every other species to surrender. "Begin targeted strikes on military installations," he ordered, expecting that a show of overwhelming force would quickly convince humans to reconsider their resistance. Council vessels advanced into the inner solar system, their weapons targeting Earth's orbital defense platforms and the primary naval base on Luna with precision strikes designed to minimize casualties. While demonstrating superiority, the destruction of several human installations proceeded exactly as planned, with Council forces expecting immediate communications from human leadership requesting negotiation. Instead, Captain Dongmin's hidden task force struck without warning at the Council fleet's supply convoy, emerging from the asteroid field to attack the vulnerable logistical vessels that supported the main force. The human ships used tactics that violated every convention of civilized warfare, targeting command vessels and support units while avoiding direct confrontation with heavier combat ships. Council officers watched in shock as human vessels refused to engage in honorable battle, instead using hit-and-run attacks that seemed designed to cause maximum disruption with minimal exposure. "They're not fighting like any civilized species," reported Subcommander Velnara from her position aboard the fleet command ship. "They're targeting our supply lines instead of seeking decisive engagement." Admiral Zephron ordered pursuit of the human raiders, but discovered that Earth's defenders had no intention of holding fixed positions or protecting specific installations. Instead, human forces scattered throughout the solar system whenever Council ships approached, regrouping to strike at different targets in a pattern that seemed random but was actually carefully coordinated. Commander Ha Newell's outer system units demonstrated the effectiveness of this approach when they ambushed a Council reconnaissance squadron near Neptune, using the planet's gravitational field to mask their approach. The human ships emerged from behind the ice giant's largest moon to deliver a devastating surprise attack before disappearing back into the maze of natural and artificial objects that filled the Outer System Council forces found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow established rules of engagement, using deception, surprise, and unconventional tactics that their training had never prepared them to counter. Lieutenant Colonel Minho's Special Operations teams achieved their first major success when they infiltrated a Council command vessel during a supply transfer operation. The human infiltrators used Council security protocols against their creators, exploiting the aliens' assumption that internal security was unnecessary during routine operations. Once aboard, the Special Forces teams gathered intelligence about Council capabilities while sabotaging critical systems and planting surveillance devices that would provide ongoing information about enemy activities. Dr. Kyung-ho's reverse engineering program began yielding immediate tactical advantages as human forces deployed adapted Council technology against its original creator's human. Vessels equipped with modified alien shields proved surprisingly resilient against Council weapons, while reverse-engineered sensors gave Earth's defenders better intelligence about enemy movements. Most importantly, human technicians learned to hack Council automated systems, introducing viruses and logic bombs that caused widespread malfunctions throughout the enemy fleet. The psychological impact of these successes proved as important as their tactical benefits, as Council crews began to fear that their supposedly inferior opponents might actually pose a genuine threat. Admiral So Young coordinated the human response from her mobile command post, constantly moving between different vessels to avoid giving Council forces a fixed target for their superior firepower. Her strategy focused on making the solar system too expensive for Council forces to control, forcing them to maintain constant vigilance against attacks that could come from any direction. "We're not trying to win decisive battles," she explained to her commanders during an encrypted conference. "We're trying to make them realize that controlling human space isn't worth the cost." The approach proved effective as Council casualties began mounting from constant harassment by human forces that seemed to appear and disappear at will. Captain Dong Min's raids against Council supply lines forced Admiral Zephyrin to divert significant resources to protecting logistical vessels, reducing the force available for offensive operations. The human attacks grew bolder as Earth's defenders gained experience and confidence, with some units penetrating deep into Council-controlled space to strike at targets the enemy had considered. Secure Council communications intercepted by GNA's intelligence networks revealed growing frustration among enemy commanders who had expected quick surrender rather than prolonged resistance. Their entire military doctrine is based on overwhelming force leading to immediate compliance, she reported during a strategic briefing. They have no experience with extended conflicts against determined opponents. This inexperience began showing in Council tactical decisions that favored impressive displays of power over effective military operations. Human forces exploited these mistakes ruthlessly, using Council overconfidence to set up ambushes and create opportunities for devastating surprise attacks. Commander Hanul achieved the most spectacular success of the early war when her units captured an entire Council supply depot in the Kuiper Belt. Seizing advanced technology and critical resources, the operation demonstrated that human forces could not only defend their own territory, but also threaten Council assets throughout the solar system. Dr. Kyung-ho's teams immediately began analyzing the captured equipment, reverse engineering Council manufacturing systems, and learning to produce advanced weapons using alien technology. The technological boost allowed human forces to begin achieving parity with Council equipment in some areas, further evening the odds in what had seemed like an impossible conflict. As weeks passed and human resistance continued, Admiral Zephyrin faced pressure from the Council to achieve decisive results in what was supposed to have been a brief peacekeeping operation. His reports back to Centraxis painted an increasingly disturbing picture of an enemy that seemed to grow stronger rather than weaker. As the conflict continued, Council casualties mounted steadily from human attacks that struck without warning and withdrew before effective response could be organized. More troubling was the evidence that human forces were adapting and improving their tactics based on experience, learning from each engagement to become more effective opponents. 6 months after the first Council ships had entered human space, Admiral So Young stood on the bridge of her flagship as it emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. where a Council manufacturing facility orbited the red dwarf star behind her. A fleet of human vessels equipped with captured and reverse-engineered alien technology prepared to demonstrate that Earth's defenders could strike at Council territories anywhere in the galaxy. Operation Prometheus had activated hidden bases and automated shipyards throughout human space, providing the industrial capacity to sustain military operations far from Earth. The war had spread beyond the Sol system as human forces took the fight directly to Council space, using the infrastructure that Jin'e's planners had secretly established. Over years of preparation, target acquisition confirmed, reported Commander Ha Newell from her sensor station, identifying the massive orbital factory that produced automated systems for Council fleets throughout this sector. The facility represented the kind of target that Council forces had never needed to defend civilian infrastructure deep within their own territory, protected only by the assumption that no enemy could threaten it. Admiral So Young gave the attack order, watching as human ships struck with precision and overwhelming force at a target the Council had considered absolutely secure. The destruction of the manufacturing facility sent shockwaves through Council space, proving that nowhere in their territory was safe from human retaliation. Similar attacks occurred simultaneously across dozens of Council systems, as human forces emerged from hidden bases to strike at infrastructure, supply depots, and communication relays. Captain Dong Min led the most audacious operation, capturing a Council fleet headquarters and using its own communication systems to broadcast a message throughout galactic civilization. The Council claims to offer protection, his transmission declared, but they cannot even protect themselves from a species they consider primitive and backwards. The psychological impact of these coordinated strikes proved devastating to Council morale and authority throughout their territory for 3,000 years. Council member species had accepted disarmament based on the promise that Council forces could protect them from any conceivable threat. Human raids demonstrated that this protection was an illusion, as Earth's forces struck at will throughout Council space. While their own fleet struggled to respond effectively, Dr. Kyung Ho's research teams had achieved technological parity with Council equipment in most areas, and superiority in others, where human innovation exceeded alien capabilities. The reverse engineering program had evolved into independent research and development, as human scientists learned to improve upon captured alien technology. Most significantly, they had cracked the codes that controlled Council automated manufacturing systems, turning the aliens' own factories against their creators. Lieutenant Colonel Min Ho's intelligence operatives made the discovery that changed everything, infiltrating Council archives to uncover the secret that the galaxy's rulers had hidden for millennia. The evidence was undeniable. The Council had been deliberately suppressing technological development among member species to maintain their dominance. Advanced research was restricted, military technology was forbidden, and innovation was channeled into areas that posed no threat to Council authority. Jin'e coordinated the simultaneous release of this information to every Council member species using captured communication networks to bypass official channels. The revelation triggered the largest political crisis in galactic history, as hundreds of species learned that their protection had come at the cost of their potential for growth and independence. On the Council homeworld of Centraxis, emergency sessions convened as member species demanded explanations for why their technological development had been limited. Council Speaker Zephulon faced questions that had never been asked in 3 millennia of galactic governance, as representatives challenged the fundamental assumptions of their civilization. "We maintained stability and peace," he argued, his multiple arms gesturing in patterns that indicated deep distress, "by ensuring that no single species could threaten others," but the argument rang hollow in the face of evidence that Council policies had kept entire civilizations in a state of artificial dependency. Some member species began demanding the return of their military autonomy, while others started secret programs to develop the weapons they had surrendered centuries earlier. The Altarian Republic was the first to formally withdraw from Council protection, declaring their intention to develop independent defensive capabilities within days. 17 other species followed their example, creating a cascade of defections that threatened the entire structure of galactic government. Admiral Zephron found himself fighting a war on multiple fronts as human forces continued their raids. While Council member species began asserting their independence, his fleet designed for peacekeeping operations against compliant populations, proved inadequate for simultaneous conflicts against multiple determined opponents. The breaking point came when the Vegan Confederation formally allied with humanity, providing bases and support for human operations in exchange for defensive technology. Other species began making similar arrangements, creating a network of independent worlds that supported each other against Council authority. President Yunwu received delegations from dozens of species seeking alliance and protection from human forces, as Earth became the center of a growing resistance movement. The galaxy that had been unified under Council authority for 3,000 years began fracturing into independent alliances and competing power blocks. Commander Hanul coordinated military assistance to newly independent species, providing them with weapons and training to defend themselves against Council retaliation. Human advisors helped establish defensive systems and military doctrines for species that had forgotten how to protect themselves after centuries of dependency. Dr. Kyung-ho's teams shared advanced technology freely with allied species, accelerating their development and creating a network of technologically capable, independent worlds. The Council's monopoly on advanced military technology crumbled as human innovation spread throughout the Galaxy. Council forces found themselves increasingly outnumbered as more species joined the independence movement. Creating a coalition that matched their military capabilities, Admiral Zephron reported to Centraxis that the situation had become untenable, with human-led forces controlling multiple sectors and threatening additional Council territories. The economic implications proved as devastating as the military ones, as independent species began trading directly with each other rather than through Council-controlled networks. Specialized worlds that had depended on Council protection found themselves courted by human allies, offering alternative security arrangements. The carefully balanced economic system that had sustained galactic civilization for millennia began collapsing as independent trade networks replaced Council monopolies. Council Speaker Zeph faced a choice between total war against half the galaxy or negotiation with the humans who had started the crisis. Ginny's intelligence networks reported growing dissent within Council territory, as member species questioned whether their leadership could maintain the stability they had promised. Some Council representatives began secret negotiations with human diplomats, seeking accommodation rather than continued conflict. The turning point came when the Council's own military commanders reported that they lacked the resources to suppress widespread rebellion while simultaneously fighting human forces. Lieutenant Colonel Minho's special operations teams had succeeded in their ultimate mission, providing irrefutable evidence of Council corruption and manipulation to species throughout the galaxy. The revelation that Council leadership had deliberately kept member species weak and dependent destroyed the moral authority that had sustained their government for 3,000 years. President Hyun-woo received an unprecedented communication from Centraxis, a formal request for ceasefire and negotiation from the Council Speaker himself. The meeting took place on the neutral world of Kepler Station, where representatives of the old Galactic Order faced the leaders of the Independence Movement Council. Speaker Zeph entered the negotiation chamber, knowing that his civilization's age of absolute authority had ended, replaced by a galaxy where multiple powers competed for influence. President Hyun-woo sat across from him with the confidence of someone who had proven that independence was possible and that freedom was worth any price required to achieve it. The agreement they negotiated established humanity as the galaxy's first independent military power since the Council's formation, but more importantly, it recognized the right of all species to choose their own government. The Council would continue to exist as one power among many, but their monopoly on authority and their ability to enforce disarmament on unwilling species had ended forever. Admiral So-young signed the military provisions that established human space as sovereign territory while guaranteeing the independence of allied species. Captain Dong-min witnessed the moment when the galaxy's balance of power shifted permanently. As multiple civilizations asserted their right to self-determination,